The notification on my phone said I had 48 hours to pay a $500 fine for violating HOA Ordinance 7.3.2. And I was standing in my driveway at 4:30 in the morning with a snow shovel in my hands when I read it. My name is Fletcher Barnes, and I run a private snow removal service in Burlington, Vermont. The January storm that had rolled through overnight dumped nearly 14 inches of powder across our neighborhood, and I had emergency services contracts with the city that required me to clear specific routes before morning traffic. The HOA knew this. I had explained it to them 3 times during board meetings. But apparently, Patricia Morehouse, the HOA president, had decided that my contract with the city meant nothing compared to her precious noise ordinance. I stood there in the dark, my breath forming clouds in the freezing air, reading and rereading the automated message. The fine stated that I had violated the community's quiet hours policy by operating snow removal equipment before 6 in the morning. The problem was simple and infuriating. My contract with Burlington required me to have Main Street access routes cleared by 5:30, which meant I needed to start at my house by 4 because my driveway connected to one of those access routes. Emergency vehicles used my street as a cut-through to reach the hospital faster during winter storms. I called my lawyer, David Chen, knowing he would already be awake. David was one of those people who survived on 4 hours of sleep and too much coffee. "Fletcher, it's not even dawn," David answered, though his voice sounded alert. "I got another fine from Patricia, $500 for clearing snow." "For clearing snow," David repeated, his tone flat with disbelief. "During a snowstorm. She says I violated quiet hours." "David, you know I have to clear these routes. The city contract specifically designates my property as an access point for emergency services. We went over this." I heard papers rustling on his end. "I have your file right here. Let me look at the HOA bylaws again." "This is the 3rd fine this winter, right?" "4th, I corrected, trudging through the snow toward my truck. "She fined me in November for having my work truck parked in the driveway overnight, even though commercial vehicles under a certain size are explicitly allowed. Then in December, she fined me twice. Once for starting my truck before 6 in the morning, and once for having ice melt on my driveway that allegedly washed onto the sidewalk." "These are harassment charges at this point," David muttered. "Keep that notification. Don't pay it." "I'm going to draft a response, and I think it's time we involve the mayor's office. Your contract is with the city. Patricia can't override municipal emergency services agreements. You think Mayor Williams will actually get involved?" Rachel Williams. "Absolutely. She's been vocal about HOAs overstepping their authority, and if there's one thing she takes seriously, it's emergency services access. Remember last year when that HOA in South Burlington tried to block a new fire hydrant installation? She personally showed up to the board meeting." I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "All right, I'll document everything today. Take pictures, keep records of what time I start, all of it." "Do that. And Fletcher, keep doing your job. Don't let Patricia intimidate you into violating your city contract. That would put you in actual legal trouble, unlike her made-up violations." We hung up, and I climbed into my truck. The plow attachment gleamed in my headlights, covered with a thin layer of fresh snow. I had 6 properties to clear before dawn, including my own, and then I needed to handle the access routes. The city paid well for emergency services contracts, but the work was demanding and the hours were brutal. Still, I took pride in it. During the last blizzard, an ambulance had used the route I cleared to reach a kid having an asthma attack. The paramedics told me later that the extra minutes I had saved them might have made the difference. As I started the truck and began clearing my driveway, I noticed lights flick on in Patricia's house across the street. Her home was the largest in the neighborhood, a sprawling colonial with pristine landscaping that she guarded like a dragon protecting treasure. I saw her silhouette in the window, watching me. Even from this distance, I could feel her disapproval radiating across the snowy street. The scrape of my plow against asphalt echoed through the quiet morning. I worked efficiently, pushing the heavy snow into neat banks along the edge of my property. My driveway was long, nearly 200 feet from the garage to the street, and it connected directly to Maple Avenue, one of the designated emergency routes. The city had chosen my property specifically because of this access point. They had even paid to widen the connection last year and install proper drainage. By the time I finished my driveway, it was 4:50. I had 40 minutes to clear 2 more residential properties and then start on the emergency routes. I pulled out of my driveway and headed toward Mrs. Chen's house, 3 blocks away. She was David's mother and had been my first client when I started the business 5 years ago. She was 83 and lived alone, and I made sure her property was always cleared before dawn so she could get her morning newspaper without risking a fall. As I worked, the sky began to lighten, shifting from black to deep purple. More lights came on in houses along the street. Burlington was waking up, and people would soon be heading out to scrape off their cars and commute to work. The snow had stopped falling, leaving everything covered in that pristine white that would turn gray and slushy by afternoon. My phone buzzed with another notification. This time it was an email from Patricia herself, not just an automated fine. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I pulled over to read it. "Mr. Barnes, your continued disregard for community standards has become untenable. The residents of Maple Grove Estates deserve peace and quiet during reasonable hours. Your insistence on conducting commercial activities from your residence, particularly during quiet hours, violates multiple covenants and restrictions. This is your final warning. Future violations will result in escalated fines and potential legal action to force compliance or remove you from the community. The board will be meeting to discuss your case specifically on January 15th. You are not invited to attend as this is a closed session. Regards, Patricia Morehouse, HOA President." I read it twice, my anger building with each word. Remove me from the community. She was actually threatening to force me out of my home because I was clearing snow for emergency services. I called David back. "She just sent me an email threatening to force me out of the neighborhood," I said without preamble. "Forward it to me right now," David replied. "Fletcher, this is good for us. She's putting her harassment in writing." And a closed session to discuss a specific homeowner without notifying that homeowner. That's a violation of Vermont HOA regulations. They're required to give you notice and an opportunity to attend any meeting where actions might be taken against you. So what do we do? I'm calling the mayor's office as soon as they open. This has gone beyond a simple dispute. Patricia is interfering with city services and she's violating state HOA laws. We're going to shut this down. I finished my route in a blur, my mind churning through scenarios. By 6:30, the sun was fully up, and I had cleared all my contracted properties plus the 2 main emergency routes. My phone rang as I was heading home. The caller ID showed Burlington City Hall. "Mr. Barnes, this is Denise Campbell from Mayor Williams's office. The mayor would like to meet with you this morning if you're available. She's had some concerns brought to her attention regarding your HOA and your emergency services contract." "David Chen called you." "He did, about 20 minutes ago. But we've actually been monitoring the situation already." The fire chief contacted us last week. Apparently, your HOA president called him demanding that he cancel your contract and find alternative routes. My jaw dropped. Patricia called the fire chief. She did. Chief Morrison was not pleased. When the mayor heard about it this morning, she decided immediate action was necessary. Can you be here at 9? I'll be there at 9, I confirmed. I drove home, exhausted but too wired to rest. My garage was warm, heated by a wood stove I kept running during winter. I made coffee and sat down at my workbench, trying to organize my thoughts. The notification of the fine sat on my phone, along with Patricia's threatening email. I had documentation of every interaction with the HOA, every fine, every complaint. David had advised me months ago to keep meticulous records, and I was grateful for that advice now. At 8:15, I showered and changed into clean clothes. I normally wore work gear all day, but a meeting with the mayor seemed to call for something more professional. I settled on jeans and a button-down shirt, a compromise between my usual style and formality. City Hall was downtown, a beautiful old building that had served Burlington since the 1800s. I found parking and made my way through the snowy entrance. Denise Campbell met me in the lobby, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an efficient manner. "Mr. Barnes, thank you for coming on such short notice. The mayor is in her office. Your attorney is already here." She led me through corridors lined with historic photographs of Burlington through the decades. David was waiting outside the mayor's office, his expression serious but determined. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." Mayor Rachel Williams stood when we entered. She was in her second term, a former city councilor who had built her reputation on practical governance and standing up to bureaucratic nonsense. She was in her early 40s, with gray streaks in her dark hair that she wore like badges of honor. "Mr. Barnes, please sit down," she said, shaking my hand. "We have a situation that needs to be resolved quickly, and I want to hear your side directly." I sat across from her desk, David beside me. The mayor had papers spread out in front of her. "I've been reading through your emergency services contract," she began. "The city contracted with you 3 years ago to maintain specific snow removal routes that provide emergency vehicle access. Your property on Maple Avenue is a critical connection point. Is that accurate?" "Yes, madam." "My driveway connects directly to Maple, which is a designated route to Burlington Medical Center. During heavy snow, those extra minutes can make a real difference for ambulances." "I'm aware," Mayor Williams said. "I also have this email from Patricia Morehouse to fire Chief Morrison, sent last Thursday. In it, she demands that he terminate your contract and find alternative routes because, and I quote, "Mr. Barnes's commercial activities are diminishing property values and disturbing the peace of our community." She also suggests that the fire department is showing favoritism by contracting with a local resident. David leaned forward. "Mayor Williams, Fletcher has received 4 fines this winter alone, totaling $2,000, all for activities directly related to his city contract. This morning, he received another $500 fine for clearing snow at 4:30 in the morning. He's required to begin work at that time to meet the city's clearing deadlines." The mayor nodded slowly, her expression hardening. "Mr. Chen has provided me with copies of all the fines and the HOA correspondence. I've also reviewed the Maple Grove Estate's bylaws. What Patricia is doing is not just petty harassment, it's interference with city services. That's a serious issue." "What can we do?" I asked. "Several things," Mayor Williams said. "First, I'm going to send a formal letter to your HOA board with copies to all residents, explaining that your work is being conducted under a city contract for emergency services. The letter will make clear that any interference with this work is interference with city operations. Second, I'm going to have the city attorney review whether we need to take legal action against the HOA for attempting to block emergency services access. Third, I'm personally going to attend your HOA's next board meeting. Patricia said the next meeting is January 15th, but it's a closed session to discuss my case, and I'm not invited, I explained. Mayor Williams's expression turned cold. That's a violation of Vermont Statute Title 27A, Section 3-116. Any HOA meeting where disciplinary action might be taken against a homeowner requires that homeowner be notified and given an opportunity to attend and respond. The meeting can't be closed session for that purpose. She made a note on her pad. I'll be sending a letter today informing the board that the meeting must be open, you must be invited, and I will be attending as a representative of city interests. Relief washed over me. Thank you, Mayor Williams. I've tried to work with Patricia, but she won't listen. I'm familiar with Patricia Morehouse, the mayor said dryly. She's been on my radar before. Last year, she tried to get the city to remove a bus stop from Maple Avenue because she claimed it brought undesirable elements into the neighborhood. When I refused, she filed a complaint with the state. It went nowhere, but she wasted everyone's time and taxpayer money responding to it. We spent another 30 minutes going over details. The mayor wanted copies of everything, which David provided from his briefcase. She asked specific questions about my contract requirements, my work schedule, and the exact nature of each fine I had received. By the time we left, I felt like I had a genuine ally in power. This is good, David said as we walked back to our cars. Rachel Williams doesn't make empty threats. If she says she's attending that board meeting, she'll be there and she'll shut down Patricia's nonsense. What about the fines? Do I have to pay them? No, don't pay anything. We'll challenge all of them at once. With the mayor's involvement, I'd be surprised if they don't withdraw the fines entirely. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. The stress of dealing with Patricia had been building gradually, like snow accumulating on a roof. Now it felt like someone had finally cleared it off before it could cause damage. The next few days passed quietly. I continued my work, clearing snow after each overnight dusting and maintaining the emergency routes. Patricia's lights came on every morning when I started my truck, but she didn't send any more emails or fines. On January 12th, a letter arrived from the city attorney's office addressed to the Maple Grove Estates HOA board. A copy was sent to me. The letter was everything Mayor Williams had promised. It detailed my emergency services contract, explained the legal authority under which I operated, and made clear that any interference with city-contracted emergency services could result in legal action against the HOA. It also cited the Vermont statute requiring open meetings and homeowner notification. The letter concluded with a paragraph that made me smile. Mayor Rachel Williams will be attending the January 15th board meeting to address these concerns directly and ensure that city emergency services are not impeded by local disputes. All residents of Maple Grove Estates are encouraged to attend this open meeting. On January 14th, I received a frantic phone call from Brenda Walsh, the HOA secretary. Brenda was a reasonable person who had been caught in the middle of Patricia's crusade against me. "Fletcher, I just want to apologize," she said immediately. "I didn't know Patricia was going to take things this far. When she told the board about the fines, she made it sound like you were running some huge commercial operation that was keeping everyone awake at night." She never mentioned the city contract. "You didn't know about my emergency services work?" I asked, surprised. "She told us you had a contract, but she said it was just regular snow removal for businesses, not emergency routes." She made it sound like something you could easily do during normal hours. If I had known the truth, I would have voted against every one of those fines. "Is the whole board coming tomorrow?" "Yes, and everyone is nervous. Having the mayor show up is a big deal." Patricia is furious, but there's nothing she can do about it. "The meeting has to be open now, and half the neighborhood is planning to come. Your situation has people talking." The night before the meeting, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I wanted to say, how I would present my case. David had advised me to stay calm and factual, to let the documentation speak for itself. But I wanted these people to understand what Patricia had put me through. The stress, the unfair fines, the constant feeling of being watched and judged in my own neighborhood. January 15th arrived cold and clear. The meeting was scheduled for 7 in the evening at the community clubhouse. I arrived at 6:45 with David. The parking lot was already full, cars lining the street. Apparently word had spread that the mayor would be attending. Inside, the clubhouse was packed. The normal setup had maybe 30 chairs for residents. Tonight, people were standing along the walls. I recognized most of them, neighbors I had waved to or chatted with over the years. Some nodded at me supportively. Others looked away. Patricia sat at the head table with the other board members. Brenda Walsh, Treasurer Tom Chen, who was David's cousin, and Vice President Margaret Foster. Patricia's expression was rigid, her mouth a thin line. She wore a burgundy suit that looked expensive and uncomfortable. Mayor Williams arrived exactly at 7, accompanied by Denise Campbell and a man I recognized as Fire Chief Morrison. The room went quiet as they entered. The mayor nodded to me, then took a seat in the front row. Patricia called the meeting to order, her voice tight. "Welcome to the January meeting of the Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association. We have a larger turnout than usual tonight. Let's begin with standard reports before we address special agenda items." The treasurer's report took 5 minutes. Tom Chen looked uncomfortable as he reported that the HOA had spent nearly $3,000 on legal fees in the past quarter, mostly related to covenant enforcement actions. Everyone knew he was talking about my case. When regular business concluded, Patricia cleared her throat. "We now come to the matter of resident Fletcher Barnes and ongoing violations of community standards. Mr. Barnes has repeatedly violated our noise ordinances and restrictions on commercial activities. The board has attempted to work with him, but he has refused to comply with established rules that all residents agreed to when purchasing their homes." "That's not accurate," I said, unable to stay quiet. Patricia's head snapped toward me. "You will have an opportunity to speak when called upon, Mr. Barnes." Mayor Williams stood up. "Actually, Patricia, this is an open meeting. Residents have the right to speak, but before we go further, I need to address several serious concerns on behalf of the city of Burlington." Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but she gestured stiffly for the mayor to continue. Mayor Williams walked to the front of the room, commanding immediate attention. "I'm here tonight because this board has been interfering with city emergency services. Mr. Barnes operates under a contract with Burlington to maintain critical snow removal routes that provide access for ambulances, fire trucks, and police during winter storms. These routes save lives. They are not optional, and they are not subject to HOA approval. Mayor Williams, with respect, we have rules in this community," Patricia interrupted. "Mr. Barnes can do his work during reasonable hours." "No, he cannot," the mayor said flatly. "Emergency routes must be cleared before morning traffic begins. That requires work to start before dawn. The city's contract with Mr. Barnes specifically requires that designated routes be cleared by 5:30 in the morning. To meet that deadline, he must begin work at approximately 4:30. That's unacceptable, Patricia insisted. Residents have a right to peace and quiet. Fire Chief Morrison stood up. Miss Morehouse, last month an ambulance used the route Mr. Barnes maintains to reach a cardiac patient. The alternative route would have added 8 minutes to our response time. That patient survived. Those 8 minutes could have meant the difference between life and death. Are you telling me that's less important than your sleep schedule? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several people nodded in agreement with the fire chief. Patricia's face flushed. That's emotional manipulation. Of course, emergency services are important, but surely there are alternative solutions that don't require disturbing an entire neighborhood at 4:30 in the morning. There aren't, Chief Morrison said. We've mapped every possible route. Mr. Barnes's property provides the most direct access to the medical center from the eastern neighborhoods. The city paid to improve that access specifically because of its importance. If you prevent him from maintaining it, you're creating a public safety hazard. David stood up next. I'm representing Mr. Barnes, and I want to address the fines he's received. The total is now $2,500 for activities that are not only legal but required by his city contract. Moreover, several of these fines violate the HOA's own bylaws. For example, the fine for parking his work truck in his driveway contradicts Section 4.2 of your bylaws, which explicitly permits commercial vehicles under 10,000 pounds. Brenda Walsh spoke up quietly. David's right. I looked it up after that fine was issued. Fletcher's truck is well under the weight limit. Patricia shot her a furious look. The spirit of that rule is to prevent commercial activities. The spirit doesn't matter, David said. The actual language of the bylaw does. You can't enforce rules based on what you wish they said. Let's talk about this supposed emergency contract, Patricia said, her voice rising. How do we know it's legitimate? Maybe Mr. Barnes is exaggerating his importance to avoid following the rules like everyone else. Mayor Williams pulled out a document. This is Mr. Barnes's contract with the city, signed by me and the city administrator. It's a matter of public record. Would you like to examine it? Patricia waved it away. That doesn't change the fact that he's running a business from his home. We have restrictions against that. A woman I recognized as Cynthia Rodriguez raised her hand. Patricia, I run a graphic design business from my home office. Are you going to fine me too? That's different. You're not creating noise and disturbance. Actually, I meet with clients sometimes, Cynthia countered. They park in my driveway just like Fletcher's truck. What's the difference? Another resident, an older man named Harold Simpson, stood up. I want to say something. Last year, my grandson had a seizure when he was visiting. The ambulance got to my house in record time because of the routes Fletcher maintains. The paramedic told me they never would have made it that fast using the old route. I, for one, appreciate what he does. Several people applauded. Patricia looked stunned, as if she couldn't believe her own neighbors were turning against her. This is ridiculous, Patricia said. The board has the authority to enforce covenants. We don't need permission from the city to manage our own community. You do when you're interfering with city services, Mayor Williams said. Patricia, I'm going to be very clear. If this board continues to fine Mr. Barnes or takes any action against him for fulfilling his city contract, Burlington will pursue legal action against the HOA. We will also explore whether individual board members can be held personally liable for interfering with emergency services. The room went dead silent. Personal liability. Those words hung in the air like a threat. Tom Chen cleared his throat. Mayor Williams, speaking as treasurer, I need to point out that the HOA cannot afford a legal battle with the city. We have limited reserves, and homeowners will not be happy about special assessments to fund a lawsuit we'll probably lose. Margaret Foster, the vice president who had been silent until now, spoke up. I move that we rescind all fines issued to Fletcher Barnes related to his snow removal activities. Second, Brenda Walsh said immediately. We need to discuss this, Patricia protested. No, we don't, Tom said. We have a motion and a second, all in favor of rescinding the fines. 3 hands went up, Tom, Brenda, and Margaret. Patricia sat with her arms crossed, refusing to vote. Motion carries, Tom announced. Fletcher, the $2,500 in fines is voided. We'll send you written confirmation. Relief flooded through me, but it was mixed with residual anger. I appreciate that, but I need to know this won't happen again. I can't do my job worrying about whether the HOA is going to fine me every time I start my truck. Mayor Williams addressed the board. I want a formal resolution from this board acknowledging Mr. Barnes's city contract and agreeing not to interfere with his work. That resolution needs to be drafted, voted on, and provided to the city attorney's office within 2 weeks. I'll draft it, Brenda volunteered. Patricia finally spoke, her voice icy. This is a gross overreach of city authority into a private community association. I'll be consulting with our attorney about our options. You do that, Mayor Williams said. But I'd advise you to choose your battles wisely, Patricia. The city has deeper pockets than your HOA, and we have a compelling public interest in protecting emergency services. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes, covering other business, but the energy had shifted. Patricia clearly recognized she had lost control. Residents who had been silent before now spoke up, questioning other decisions the board had made. Someone asked about the $3,000 in legal fees. Another person wanted to know why the HOA had hired an attorney without consulting the community. By the time the meeting adjourned, Patricia looked defeated. She gathered her papers quickly and left without speaking to anyone. I noticed several residents approach Mayor Williams to thank her for coming. David clapped me on the shoulder. That went well. Better than I expected, I admitted. I can't believe they actually rescinded the fines. They had no choice once the mayor laid out the liability issues. No HOA board wants to be personally sued. Chief Morrison came over to shake my hand. Keep up the good work, Fletcher. What you do matters. Thank you, Chief. That means a lot. As people filed out, several neighbors stopped to apologize for not speaking up sooner. Harold Simpson introduced me to his daughter, who had been at his house the day her son had the seizure. Thank you, she said simply, her eyes wet. My boy is fine now, but those minutes mattered. Please don't let anyone stop you from doing what you do. Driving home that night, I felt like a weight had been lifted. The stress and anxiety that had been building for months finally released. I had my city contract, the mayor's support, and the HOA board had voted to rescind the fines. It should have been over, but it wasn't. 3 days later, I received a certified letter at my home. It was from Patricia personally, not the HOA board. The letter informed me that she was filing a personal lawsuit against me for harassment, emotional distress, and defamation. She claimed that my actions at the board meeting and my attorney's statements had damaged her reputation and caused her severe stress. I called David immediately. She's suing me personally now. Can she do that? David was quiet for a moment. She can file a lawsuit. Whether it will survive a motion to dismiss is another question. Forward me the letter. This sounds like a slap suit. A what? Strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's when someone files a baseless lawsuit to intimidate or silence criticism. Vermont has anti-SLAPP statutes. If we can prove that's what this is, we can get it dismissed and potentially recover our legal fees from Patricia. This is insane. All I did was defend myself. I know. Let me review the complaint. In the meantime, don't contact Patricia directly. Don't post about this on social media. Just document everything and let me handle it. The lawsuit added a new layer of stress, but I tried to focus on my work. Snow continued falling through late January and into February. I maintained my routes, cleared my contracted properties, and kept meticulous records of everything. David filed a motion to dismiss Patricia's lawsuit, arguing that it was a SLAPP suit designed to punish me for exercising my rights at a public meeting. The court scheduled a hearing for mid-February. In the meantime, something unexpected happened. I started receiving calls from other residents in Maple Grove Estates asking if I could clear their driveways too. Apparently, watching the conflict had made people aware of my business, and they liked what they saw. I've been using a service from South Burlington, one neighbor told me. But they're unreliable. You're always out here at dawn getting the job done. Can you add me to your route? Within 2 weeks, I had signed contracts with 7 new clients in my own neighborhood. The irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia's campaign to drive me out had actually grown my business. On February 9th, I was clearing Mrs. Chen's driveway when I noticed unusual activity at Patricia's house. A moving truck was parked in front, and workers were loading furniture. I tried not to stare, but it was hard to miss. By afternoon, the neighborhood was buzzing with rumors. Brenda Walsh called me that evening with the news. Patricia resigned from the board, Brenda said. She sent an email to all the board members this morning. She and her husband are moving to South Burlington, something about wanting a quieter neighborhood. I almost laughed. She's leaving because of the noise. I think it's more than that. After the meeting with the mayor, a lot of residents started questioning her leadership. There was talk of a recall petition. Plus, her lawsuit against you has made her pretty unpopular. People think she took things way too far. What happens to the lawsuit if she moves? That's a question for your attorney, but I hope it means she'll drop it. Fletcher, I want to apologize again for not standing up sooner. I should have questioned those fines from the beginning. You stood up when it mattered, I said. That's what counts. David called the next day with an update on the lawsuit. Patricia's attorney contacted me. They want to dismiss with prejudice, meaning she can't refile. They're not admitting wrongdoing, but they're dropping it completely. I think her lawyer finally explained that she had no case and was just wasting money. So it's over. It's over. And Fletcher, I've been keeping track of your legal expenses through all of this. I'm going to send a letter to the HOA requesting reimbursement. The board's actions created this situation, and they should cover your defense costs. Will they pay? With Patricia gone and new leadership, I think they will. Nobody wants to keep fighting. The hearing I had been dreading never happened. Patricia dropped her lawsuit, and 2 weeks later, David received a check from the HOA for $5,000, covering all my legal fees plus the rescinded fines. An apologetic letter from the new board president, Margaret Foster, accompanied the check. The board wants to move forward positively, Margaret wrote. We appreciate the essential services you provide to our community and to the city. We have drafted the resolution the mayor requested, formally acknowledging your city contract and guaranteeing that you will not face HOA action for fulfilling those duties. We hope this closes this unfortunate chapter. Spring arrived gradually, as it always does in Vermont. The snow melted, revealing brown grass and the debris of winter. My phone stayed quiet in the mornings, no more pre-dawn notifications of fines. Patricia's house sold quickly to a young family with 2 kids. The husband was a nurse at Burlington Medical Center, and when I met him, he thanked me for maintaining the emergency routes. "I use that route when I'm called in for emergencies," he said. "Makes a real difference, especially in winter." In April, Mayor Williams invited me to a city council meeting. I wasn't sure why until I arrived and saw my name on the agenda. The mayor presented me with a Community Service Award for my work maintaining emergency access routes. "Fletcher Barnes represents the best of Burlington," Mayor Williams said to the assembled council and audience. "He does essential work without seeking recognition, and when faced with opposition, he stood up for what was right. Our community is safer because of people like him." The applause was genuine and warm. David was there, grinning. So were Chief Morrison and several of my clients. Even some of my neighbors from Maple Grove Estates attended. Afterward, at the reception, a reporter from the Burlington Free Press asked if I wanted to comment on the HOA situation. "It was a difficult few months," I said carefully. "But it worked out. I'm grateful for the mayor's support and for neighbors who stood up. The important thing is that emergency services weren't disrupted. That's what really mattered." The reporter published a story the next week titled, "Local Snow Removal Contractor Honored After HOA Dispute." It was fair and factual, focusing on the importance of emergency services routes rather than the personal conflict. A few days after publication, I received a letter from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, inviting me to speak at their annual conference about the intersection of HOA authority and municipal services. "You're famous now," David joked when I told him. "I just want to do my work without drama," I said. "You can do both. And Fletcher, your situation has actually helped other people. I've gotten calls from 3 other homeowners facing similar HOA overreach. Your case set a good precedent." Summer in Burlington is beautiful, all green leaves and long days. My snow removal business was obviously quiet, but I kept busy with landscaping and property maintenance. The new families in Patricia's old house became friends. Their kids played basketball in my driveway, and we had barbecues on weekends. In August, Margaret Foster called to ask if I would join the HOA board. "We have an opening, and I think your perspective would be valuable. Plus, it would be nice to have someone who actually understands property maintenance making decisions." I thought about it for a few days before declining. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't think it's my thing. I'd rather just be a regular resident." "I understand," Margaret said. "But if you ever change your mind, the offer stands." The following winter arrived with the first major snowfall in early December. I was up at 4:30, just like always, clearing my driveway and preparing to maintain the emergency routes. My phone stayed silent. No angry emails, no fines, no threats. Just the quiet scrape of my plow against pavement and the satisfaction of work well done. Around 6 in the morning, as I was finishing the main route, an ambulance came through, lights flashing. It passed quickly, taking the route I had just cleared toward the hospital. I watched it disappear around the corner and felt that familiar sense of purpose. This was why I did it, not for recognition or awards, but for moments like this, when preparation met necessity. Later that morning, Chief Morrison called. "Fletcher, wanted you to know that ambulance this morning was responding to a stroke victim. They got there fast because of your work. Patient is stable now." "Glad I could help," I said. "You always do," the chief replied. As winter deepened, I settled into my routine. Early mornings, quiet work, knowing that somewhere my effort might matter in ways I would never fully know. The HOA drama faded into memory, a strange few months that seemed almost surreal in retrospect. In February, I received a wedding invitation from one of my college friends in Boston. The invitation included a +1, and on impulse, I asked out Lily, a woman I had met at a coffee shop downtown. She was a teacher at Burlington High School, smart and funny, with a grounded perspective on life. "So you're the guy who fought the HOA," she said when I picked her up for our first date. "You heard about that. Everyone in Burlington heard about it. My principal used your story in an assembly about standing up for what's right." "That's embarrassing," I said. "It's impressive," she corrected. "Not many people would have fought back like you did." We dated through the winter and into spring. Lily understood the demands of my work, the early mornings and unpredictable schedule. She even came with me once at 4 in the morning to see what I did, sitting in the passenger seat of my truck with coffee and good humor as I cleared routes through fresh snow. "I get it now," she said as we watched the sun rise over the cleared streets. "This isn't just a job for you." "No," I agreed. "It's not." By summer, we were talking about moving in together. My house had plenty of space and Lily loved the neighborhood despite its history of HOA drama. "That's all over now," she said confidently. "You proved your point. Nobody's going to mess with you again." She was right. The new HOA board under Margaret's leadership was reasonable and focused on actual community issues like road maintenance and common area upkeep. They left residents alone to live their lives. It was how an HOA should work. In September, almost 2 years after the initial conflict, I was invited back to City Hall for another ceremony. The city was dedicating the emergency routes I maintained, installing small signs that read, "Emergency Services Access Route Keep Clear." Mayor Williams cut the ribbon on the first sign, installed at the entrance to my street. These routes represent a partnership between the city and community members who care, the mayor said in her speech. Fletcher Barnes showed us that individual citizens can make a real difference in public safety. These signs will remind everyone of that importance. Lily squeezed my hand as the mayor spoke. David was there too, along with my neighbors and clients. Even Tom Chen and Brenda Walsh from the HOA attended, showing support. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me hesitantly. "Mr. Barnes, I'm Sarah Morehouse, Patricia's daughter." I wasn't sure what to say. "Hello, Sarah. I wanted to apologize for my mother's behavior. I was away at college during most of the conflict, but I heard about it later. What she did was wrong. She gets fixated on things sometimes and can't see reason. I'm sorry you had to deal with that." "Thank you for saying that," I said. "How is she doing?" "She's fine. Happy in South Burlington, honestly. I think the move was good for her. She's less stressed now." Sarah hesitated. "I work for the Vermont Housing Authority now. Your case has actually been really helpful in our work. We've been developing guidelines for HOAs about overreach and individual rights. Your situation was a perfect example of what not to do." "I'm glad something good came from it," I said. "More than you know," Sarah replied. "You helped change policy. That matters." As autumn painted the Vermont hills in brilliant colors, I reflected on the journey of the past 2 years. What had started as a simple dispute over snow removal had become something larger, a question of rights and responsibilities, of individual freedom versus collective rules, of standing up for what was right even when it was difficult. The first snow of the season fell in October, just a dusting. I was up early as always, clearing my driveway in the pre-dawn dark. My phone stayed quiet. The neighborhood stayed peaceful. And somewhere in Burlington, emergency responders had clear routes if they needed them. Lily and I got engaged in November. We planned a small wedding for the following summer, just family and close friends. David would be my best man, naturally. Chief Morrison joked that he wanted to provide the emergency vehicles for our exit instead of a traditional limo. "Only if they're silent," Lily said. "No sirens at my wedding." Winter arrived in force in December, and I was busier than ever. My client list had grown to cover most of Maple Grove estates and several neighboring communities. I hired an assistant, a young guy named Marcus, who was studying business at the University of Vermont and needed flexible work hours. "This is cool," Marcus said one morning as we cleared routes together. "I didn't realize snow removal could be this important." "Everything's important if you do it right," I told him. On Christmas Eve, a blizzard hit Burlington with unusual intensity. Nearly 2 feet of snow fell in 12 hours. I was out from 3 in the morning until noon, working nonstop to keep the emergency routes passable. Marcus worked alongside me, learning quickly and never complaining despite the brutal conditions. Around noon, as we were finishing the last section, my phone rang. It was Chief Morrison. "Fletcher, I need you to know something. We've had 17 emergency calls since midnight. Every single one got through because of the routes you maintained. One of them was my own grandson. He had a bad asthma attack and the ambulance got there fast. He's okay now, but those minutes mattered. So thank you, from me personally." I had to clear my throat before answering. "Just doing my job, Chief." "You're doing more than that," he said. "You're saving lives. Don't ever forget that." That evening, exhausted and satisfied, I sat with Lily in front of my fireplace. The snow had stopped, leaving Burlington blanketed in white. The neighborhood was peaceful, everyone safe in their homes. "Long day?" Lily asked. "Good day," I corrected. "Hard but good." She snuggled against me. "I'm proud of you, you know that." "I do." The engagement ring on her finger caught the firelight. In a few months, we'd be married. Eventually, maybe kids. A life built here in Burlington, in this neighborhood, doing work that mattered. My phone buzzed with a notification. For a split second, old instinct made my stomach tighten, remembering those pre-dawn fines from Patricia. But it was just a text from David. "Merry Christmas, Fletcher. Hope you're staying warm. The city attorney's office called me today. They wanted to make sure I knew that your contract is up for renewal in March. They're planning to extend it for another 5 years and increase the compensation. Mayor Williams pushed for it personally. You won. Enjoy the victory." I smiled and showed Lily the text. 5 more years. 5 more years of 4:30 mornings, she said. "Think you can handle it?" "With you, absolutely." Outside, the snow glittered under streetlights, emergency routes clear, community safe. Life moving forward in the way it's supposed to, with purpose and meaning and the quiet satisfaction of work well done. The HOA drama that had once consumed so much energy now seemed distant, almost unreal. Patricia was gone, living her life elsewhere. The fines were rescinded. The lawsuit dismissed. What remained was the work, the community, and the knowledge that standing up for what was right had been worth every difficult moment. As winter deepened, and I continued my early morning routine, I sometimes thought about what I would tell someone facing a similar situation. The advice would be simple. Document everything, find good legal help, and don't back down when you're in the right. But more than that, remember why you're fighting. It's not about winning against an opponent. It's about protecting something that matters, whether that's emergency services, property rights, or just the freedom to live your life without unreasonable interference. The spring would bring warmer weather and my wedding to Lily. Summer would bring new challenges and opportunities. But for now, in the deep of winter, I was exactly where I needed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. And on those cold, dark mornings when I started my truck at 4:30, if lights came on in neighboring houses, it was only people preparing for their own days. No more angry HOA presidents watching from windows. No more fines waiting on my phone. Just the work, the snow, the quiet satisfaction of service, and the knowledge that somewhere in Burlington, my efforts might save a life. That was enough. That was everything.